G'day YouTubers, and welcome to another episode in the Northern Moreton Bay series. This episode comes to you earlier than I'd expected, courtesy of bad weather and the fact that work commitments don't allow me to take time off when the weather is suitable. Therefore I spent my time doing this video rather than out fishing as we would all prefer. Never mind, I hope you get something out of it. In this video I'm going to concentrate on the marks and examining areas of interest, and hopefully I'll be able to do a little bit more history in the next video. But this one concentrates on the area between Comboyuro Point and Bribie. There's not a lot of history there until we get close to Bribie. In an earlier video I mentioned the 4 beacons as a fishing spot. That's E2, E3, E4 and E5 down further south. On the way up to Comboyuro Point I haven't mentioned any of the other beacons that are along the shipping channel, and I guess the reason for that is that other than going to collect some bait, I haven't fished these for about 15-20 years. I'll take the time now to backtrack on that and go along the shipping channel with all these beacons before we go further to the west. Now going north, the next beacon we come across is the E1 beacon. That's west of Tangalooma and a little bit northeast of the Captain Nielsen wreck. I do see the occasional person fishing this. Can't say I've seen very many, and I couldn't tell you how long it's been since I've had a look at that beacon. Back in the day I would have had a look at it for bait at least. I can't recall ever having fished it, although I may have. Long time ago. Nevertheless, any beacon's worth having a look at if you're after liveys. Next one is the M7 beacon, which is just west of the airstrip for Tangalooma. That's another one that, if I fished it, it was a long time ago and probably just for bait. I see the odd bait fishing it from time to time as I'm going past. I'm not sure whether that's because they're in the know and they go there at the right time, or whether they're just trying their luck on something that only produces bait. On the other hand, if there's bait hanging around it, there should be fish as well. As I make this video, I'm looking at the Navionics map and looking at the contours on the bottom, and they certainly are a little bit interesting, so maybe next time I'm in the area I'll pull up there and have a good look around. If we continue north alongside Moreton, we come to the NE3 beacon, which is just west of Bulwer. Now that's a beacon I'm pretty certain I haven't visited at all. When I'm up in that area I'm focused on the Bulwer drop-off, and I got my eyes glued to the sounder looking to find the spot where I'm going to fish. Picking up some live squid off the other areas I've mentioned around Bulwer is undoubtedly a good bait, but just as undoubtedly, as I make this video, it's become obvious to me that I have been overlooking a potential source of liveys in favour of having my eyes glued to the sounder. Your brain just goes into idle sometimes when you're out fishing, which is why you go out fishing. Now I'll just mention in passing that a little bit further north is the NE4 beacon. That's outside the arbitrary line that I've chosen to mark the northern boundary of the North Moreton Bay area. I just mentioned because it's there, and I know nothing about this beacon. I'm quite certain that I've never stopped at that beacon to even look for bait. Once I get past Comboyuro Point, I've been focused on heading out east, over towards Flinders, Hutchies, those sort of areas. Now that we've gone past the northern boundary, I'll take us back down south to where the main channel branches off from the northeast channel that we just followed. The first beacon to speak about there is the M5, which I always think of as marking the actual turning point where the northeast channel and the main channel branch off. There's another beacon where I don't see that many people fishing it. There's always a few around, but it's not like it's a crowded area. I see 2, 3, maybe 4 boats there at a time. And again, I don't think I've ever fished this beacon for anything other than bait. Not far from the M5 beacon is the M6 beacon. That's going along the main branch of the channel, and that's part of the channel that I very rarely go into. However, now we're starting to get into an area where I see a lot of boats fishing. Not so much on the M6, but further along the channel. We'll get there in a minute. As for the M6, I can't tell you much about it other than to check it for bait, and while you're there have a look around for some fish. But it's not one that I've seen a lot of baits fishing on. Continuing on up the main channel, we come to a beacon that's labelled M4-M6. I can only assume that that is a very unimaginative name for for the beacon that is in between the M4 beacon and the M6 beacon. They must have run out of ideas for naming beacons, or we've already used M5, we need one between M4 and M6, so who knows. As odd as the name is, we are getting into an area that I sometimes see a lot of boats fishing. I don't always see them there, so I guess it's a seasonal thing, and it's not somewhere I've fished. I don't go up the main channel. I've only been up there a few times. I do check the beacons for bait whenever I go past one, but I haven't seen any real fish there. And when I go past and I see this massive boats fishing around a beacon, I just keep going because there's too many boats there. They don't need another one. There's other areas to fish. But if you don't mind getting in with the crowd, keep an eye out when you see a lot of boats there. They're probably there for a reason. Other than that, as you're going past, stop and have a look for some bait. The next two beacons are the M3 and the M4 beacons. They can be quite popular fishing spots just from what I've seen. I've only ever been to them a couple of times, but going past I look over there and sometimes I just see a mass of boats around those beacons. Now, it's funny how when you're fishing you sort of get in a rush and you go to certain areas for a while and then you look for other areas. I'm always looking for areas, but I tend to sort of focus on some areas, I guess, that I go to fairly regularly. And I just notice these things as I go past. Anyway, point is, sometimes there's just a mass of boats around these beacons, so at certain times of the year I'm guessing they are a real attractant to fish. A couple of times I have been past and looked around and there's been some bait, but I haven't seen anything on my sounder, so not two beacons that I actually have ever fished. However, they also mark the top end of the Pearl Channel and the start of the Spitfire bypass channel from the main channel. A little bit further along, marking a turning point in the channel, is the M2 red beacon and an unnamed green beacon corresponding to it on the inside of the corner. With those two beacons we have moved north of the cut-off line between Comboyuro Point and Bribie, which I had decided constituted the northern Moreton Bay, so we'll move back down below that and keep going across the bay. And one thing I missed as I was going along there, and that is I didn't mention that the M3 beacon marks the northern end of the Pearl Channel, and I have actually fished around the M3 beacon. Didn't do any good, it caught some bait, but didn't see any fish there on the couple of days I've been there. But it marks the northern end of the Pearl Channel, and during mackerel season the north and south ends of the Pearl Channel are a great place to try for some mackerel. I have caught mackerel there, but I think from memory it was mainly on the southern end of the Pearl Channel. I don't think I've caught any up on the northern end, although I have been told by many people that northern end is good for mackerel as well. And while we're on the subject of the Pearl Channel, I can't recall fishing that very much. I think I might have fished it twice in my life. Been up there once recently with Sea Venture and I did alright with mackerel down the bottom end. I think they were small mackerel. I probably might have thrown them back. Hard to remember, but there are a few there. And mackerel's like that. Sometimes you get a spate of small ones and then they grow up and you'll get a spate of big ones. Sometimes it's a mixed bag. But anyway, as for marks in the channel, I've got a few public marks here and cross-referencing them against the bathymetry maps I've got of that area. The structure on the bottom looks really promising. I haven't fished these marks. They are public marks, so I guess a lot of people know about them. But given the structure on the bottom, I think they're well worth a look around. As always, you're not going to go right on that pinpoint spot and expect to catch fish. But if you go to that spot and get your sounder going and have a look around the area, now looking at the bathymetry at the bottom there, I think there's a very good chance you'll get lucky and find that there's bait holding there, and wherever there's bait holding, there's going to be larger fish wanting to eat them. When I was up there in Sea Venture recently, I did some scanning around in the Pearl Channel. These are some of the marks that I found there that were interesting enough to have another look at. I didn't see any fish on them, but I thought there was something there that was worth a second look. They're not all marks that I've actually scanned last time I was up. Some of them I've picked out from looking at bathymetry data and singled them out as areas that I'd like to scan next time I'm back up there. I also want to take you through some of these marks with the bathymetry and just show you the sorts of things that I thought were worth looking at again or worth having a look at in the first place. I'm going to examine the marks individually, starting up the north end and working my way down the western side. We'll start off with these 2 marks right at the very top. As I've said many times, these marks aren't a spot where you can just go and pull up and fish. They're a spot where you can go and start looking for fish. In this case, I've marked the areas that I'd be scanning. I'd use my side scan sonar and I'd go around those drop-offs and see what I could find. If you don't have side scan sonar, you can use your traditional sonar or your down vision and just zigzag on and off the drop-offs. Just where the fish are going to be holding around a structure like this depends very much on the flow of the current. I'd be concentrating on the areas where I've got the arrows when I was sounding around, and which one of the arrows you should concentrate on will depend very much on which way the tide's going and how strong the current is. So just some general ideas on where to look, not definite spots. And just as a final thought on this area, if there's no run in the tide, either at the top or the bottom of the tide, I'd be having a look in this area I've got the oval patch over. If there's any rubbly bottom there, that's where the fish are going to be holding. If it's just smooth sand, probably a waste of time. But some of the rubble patches can be quite small, so if you don't look, you'll never know. This marks one that I came across while I was examining the bathymetry. It's a sort of a valley that goes back up into the shallows. The fact that it's cut out means that the sides are something harder. Could be coffee rock, sandstone, whatever. Something hard enough to hold up anyway under the current. And that creates a structure that fish might be holding on, which makes it worthwhile having an investigation next time I'm out there with a sonar. It may come to nothing. It may be that it's not even there anymore. These things come and go, particularly in high current areas where they wash away. But as I said a minute ago, unless you go and look for yourself, you just never know. First thing I'd be doing would be to have a look around that point and see if the valley is still there for a start, but also check around that point to see just what the structure looks like there and if anything's holding there. Depending on the tide, I think that's one of the likely spots that things will be holding, either side of that point. Now, if there's nothing on the point, I'd have a look up through the valley using my side scan to scan both sides of it, just to see if there's anything there. Particularly using the down scan to have a look to see if there's any rubble on the bottom. That'll tell you whether it's worth coming back and checking at various points in the tide. If there's no rubble there, not worth coming back. This next one is one that I marked when I was sounding through the Pearl Channel. I don't remember why I marked it, but it does correspond to some structure showing in the bathymetry data. Now, whether that's the reason I marked it, I'm not sure, but for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to say it is, and I'm going to talk about the bathymetry images in relation to the spot that I've marked and how I'd go about looking for fish at that spot if the bathymetry information was correct. At the bottom is the public mark that I was heading for when I marked this particular spot. I was wanting to check out the public mark and see if it was worth having a look at, but there was nothing there. I only got sandy bottom. If there was any structure there, coffee rock, whatever, it's been covered up with sand. The current may uncover it again at some point, but the day I was there, I didn't see anything. However, I did mark this other spot, and the bathymetry is holding up to the idea that this is worth something, but I can't promise that it was the bathymetry that made me mark it. It could have been anything. I didn't have a screenshot, and I don't remember. I just marked it to go back and have another look at on another day. If that ridge is there on the bottom, I'd be going along the steep side of it with the side scan and seeing if there's any structure there to hold the fish, if there's any fish there or any bait holding there. You could also zigzag across it with down vision or traditional 2D sonar. Well, this video is already up around 15 minutes and I've only covered half the marks that I intended to cover, so I think I'll terminate this video at this point and continue in the next video to cover the rest of the marks down the Pearl Channel and across to the bottom end of Bribie. I'm not sure if we're going to have time to get some history in there or not. Maybe not. If not, I'll put some history in the next one. The other thing I wanted to put in this video was some times and fuel consumptions to get from the various ramps to the points that I've been talking about. I was doing that for the Middle Moreton Bay series, and having a break, I totally forgot to add that into this series until someone reminded me. I will be adding that, but this video's already gone long enough, so I'll put that in the next video or the one after and try and cover a lot of the marks that I've already talked about. Once again, thank you for taking the time to watch this. I hope you've got something out of it, maybe some marks that you didn't know existed. Until next time, good fishing.